Welcome to Insights from the Couch, where real conversations meet real life at midlife.
We're Colette and Laura, two therapists and best friends, walking through the journey right alongside you. Whether you're feeling stuck, restless, or just unsure of what's next, this is a space for honest conversations, messy truths, and meaningful change.
And our Midlife Masterclass is now open. If you're looking to level up, get into action, and make midlife the best season yet, go to insightsfromthecouch.org and join our waitlist. Now let's dive in. Hi guys, welcome back to Insights from the Couch. I'm so excited to introduce to you today Fran Houser and tell you about her. We're going to be talking about how to be effective at work without losing yourself, how you can really be successful, and it might not be what you think. I love everything that Fran has to say. She is a best-selling author, keynote speaker, and champion of women in the workplace, a former Fortune 500 executive turned startup investor. Fran has funded more than 40 female-founded companies. So impressive. Fran is also the author of The Myth of the Nice Girl and Embrace the Work, Love Your Career, two acclaimed guides for women who want to succeed without losing themselves. Yes, that is all of us and our listeners. Fran is also the co-host of Bookbound, a podcast for nonfiction writers, and the founder of Bedford Books, the first bookstore in her hometown of Bedford, New York, which is right near where I grew up. So exciting. Her insights have been featured in Fortune, CNBC, Fast Company, Cosmopolitan, Women's Health, and so much more. Fran, welcome. I'm so impressed, and we're so glad to have you here.
I'm so happy to be here with both of you. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So let's dive right in, because I have a million questions as I've been reading your books. So first, tell us a little bit about your background and your inspiration for Myth of the Nice Girl, and even maybe, if you don't mind, a little bit about your parents and the inspiration you drew from them, because I loved hearing about how they approached work and were successful.
Oh, my parents are the best. I love them so much. So yeah, let's start there. So my parents migrated from Italy when I was 2 years old. So I was born in Reggio Calabria, which is like the toe of the boot, like right across from Sicily. We moved to Mount Kisco, New York, which is actually the next town over from where I currently live, Bedford, where I opened the bookstore. You know, my father was a stonemason. My mother was a tailor. They didn't speak a word of English when they moved here. They had very, very little money. I'm the oldest of four. So I actually took on a lot of responsibility at a very young age because I was their translator, you know, for everything. In first grade, I was doing invoices for my dad's business.
Wow.
If he had to go and actually get to a potential job, I literally listened on the phone and took down directions, you know, and I went in the car, we found it together. I stood there with him. We talked to the potential client. I was his translator. So I actually learned about business at a very, very young age. And I did take on a lot of responsibility at a young age. But my parents they've always been so loving and so caring. And it's been so impressive to watch them. I can't even imagine moving to another country where I don't know the language, you know, but they moved really with their entire community, their siblings, their cousins, everybody migrated to the same town. Uh-huh. So we've always had this incredible community. And I think that made all of the difference. And I watched my dad and I watched my mom. I watched them in their businesses. They were, you know, the way that they interacted with people, even not having a full grasp of the language, all their nonverbal cues, you know, they would always smile. They would tap someone on the arm, look at them in the eyes. And they were always just really lovely and charming and kind. You know, they were always very kind. And at the same time, when they needed to be direct, if somebody wasn't paying their invoice or, you know, I saw how they did it. They again, very kind, but very direct. So I learned so much from them as a child. And I think I kind of always knew that I wanted to go into business in some way. I also really loved books. I mean, reading was like my favorite thing as a child. I would always escape into books. So my career, I've had so many pivots. I've really had like such a squiggly career. I spent many years in corporate. My last job in corporate was president of digital at Time Inc., where I was really focused on the digital transformation of the company. So, all of the magazines that we've loved, right? We grew up with People Magazine and Style, Entertainment Weekly. As you said, I then moved over into startup investing. I did that for a while. And now I'm in this like author, speaker, bookstore owner era of my career. But I will tell you, because you asked about the myth of the nice girl and how did I come up with that idea? Like, I always knew that I wanted to write a women's leadership book because I mentored so many women over the years. But I never knew like exactly what my point of view was going to be. And my agent said, you really need a specific point of view. Like, there's like a bazillion women's leadership books. And I remember one day walking into a Barnes and Noble in Manhattan and going over to the women in work table and noticing that so many of the books were promoting a more masculine form of leadership. And I was like, gosh, this is interesting. Like, this is not the way that I lead. I've always really leaned into more traditionally feminine traits, kindness, compassion, warmth, empathy, while still having real operating rigor, but I always leaned into those traits and I did very well. I did make it to the corner office. So I was kind of like, you know what, maybe that's the book that I should write, because that's genuinely who I am. It's how I've led. It's the advice that I've given to countless number of women. And that was really kind of how the idea for the book came together.
It's such a fantastic POV, because I think it is, first of all, even when you hear first the myth of the nice girl, you think there's so much messaging about how we as women can't be nice. Nice is bad, right? And some people will differentiate that kindness can be different from nice, but there is still this double bind that women face where it can be confusing to think that we have to harden ourselves in order to be effective so as not to be perceived as weak. And certainly there's a lot of bias still against women, but you're really saying, no, you can be direct, you can be assertive, you can be a leader, and you can be successful. And you don't have to lose yourself and your kindness, your compassion, and your empathy. I mean, you are very humble in what you're saying, but you've been wildly successful in corporate America. Like you said, you made it to the corner office. I mean, you mentioned People. You were instrumental in taking People magazine into digital, right? And having it become one of the biggest, if not the biggest, I think, media website, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it was. It was the biggest when I was there. Yeah.
So you've
Yeah.
had to navigate through these biases, and you've found a way to stay true to who you are as a woman, as a person, but also to be able to be an effective leader and executive. So tell us more about how you did that and how to navigate that double bind.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting when I think about how like being nice has helped me in my career. Like, I can think of very specific things, and I'd like to talk about these things because I think it's important, right? Like, I think about some of the biggest deals that I negotiated, and I believe that they were successfully negotiated because I always start a negotiating conversation by asking the other person who I'm negotiating with, what's important to them? Like, what value are they looking to create out of this partnership or out of this agreement or, whatever it is? But I really want the other person to know that I care about that. And I think what that does is it creates a sense of trust, like right from the get-go. And it's not artificial. It's not, I'm not being, manipulative. It's just, I genuinely want to make sure that we get to a win-win when we're negotiating. And actually, when I was doing research for the myth of the nice girl, I talked to a lot of negotiating experts, and I asked them, like, what's the biggest factor to getting to a win-win outcome, every single one of them, hands down, said empathy. That when you show empathy, that when you show that you care about the other person, and it's not just about what you're going to get out of it. So I think that's a really great example of how being thoughtful, being intentional, being kind, because you think about negotiating and like, I don't know, sometimes I think we automatically go to like the being tough and you know what I mean? Like eking out every ounce of of whatever, like to make it a good deal for you. And it doesn't have to be that way. And I also think about, as a leader, I always cared so much about my team. I really wanted every single one of them to be successful. And I spent a lot of time championing each of them, making sure that they got put on high profile projects, really helping them navigate politics or, navigate different social dynamics within the organization. And because of that, I was able to recruit top talent to work with me because I had developed a reputation for being that kind of leader, right? So all of these things, like, it's not, I just want to be really clear, like, there's actually an effect on ROI for the organization, for your team, for your department, the way that you lead, the way that you show up for people, right? It makes a difference.
I love that you said the empathy piece. I mean, empathy is the backbone of like what Colette and I do. Like that's all day long we're using empathy. And I've often thought like I should have leveraged this for something that's a little bit more, I don't know, something I could make more money off of basically. But it's so funny. Like not everybody really, the skills you're talking about are kind of not always synonymous with the corporate world. And the people who get attracted to the corporate world don't have some of these skills that you're talking about just sort of naturally. So it just speaks to the fact that you were able to bring these things into your work naturally.
It's a great point. Erica Kessman wrote a great book that's called Bring Your Human to Work. And like, to me, what that means is don't check qualities like kindness, compassion, and empathy at the door.
Yeah.
When you go to work, if like that's naturally who you are, those are things that they're really going to serve you well. And also, when you show up as yourself, you're just more likely to be confident. You're more likely to be comfortable in your own skin. I have had questions from people around, but what if I'm not naturally empathetic? And I want to be more empathetic. One of the things that I suggest is really being in rooms with people that are empathetic, because just even observing the way that they navigate different situations, the way that they respond, the way that they're so present, and just observing can be really helpful in kind of trying to be a little bit more empathetic,
That's a great suggestion, Fran. And I always like to reframe empathy for people who don't feel that they have it naturally, or will say to me in therapy, like, I don't feel what other people feel. I have too much natural empathy at times, but obviously it serves well as a therapist. But I like to reframe it as the effort to understand someone else's experience. And that is something you can do by being more intentional. And it really goes with your point, which is by being in the room and seeing people who are more naturally inclined, or they've developed it, then you see examples of what it looks like. And you can start with just getting curious. Ask people about their experience. Don't judge yourself if you don't feel what they feel. Just make an effort to understand and learn more. And I think anyone can become a little more empathetic with some effort.
I get a lot of questions around mentorship, and finding mentors and what to look for in a mentor. And I think this is a great example of, if empathy is a trait that you're looking to develop, find a mentor that's really empathetic, because they'll also help you develop it more yourself, and by helping you like work through real life experiences. It's like when you're stuck and like you're struggling with something and you want to go to your mentor as a sounding board. I would say think about that too from a what are you seeking in a mentor? Because we're so focused on the harder skills, what I call hard skills. I'm looking to be better at, I don't know, some technical skills or marketing but there's
Spreadsheet.
these soft skills, right? There's these
Right.
soft skills that are really important.
What's coming up for me as you're talking though is like, and as somebody who has a high natural degree of empathy, is like that I always worry that it'll get used against me.
Mm.
Do you hear this about women in the workplace?
Yeah, and I think this is where it's like really important that you also show up with strength. And like what I mean by that is when you show up in a way that can be perceived as being a pushover or being passive, like that can work against you, because I think that automatically kind of then veers into like, oh, she's weak. She's just kind of like letting everybody walk all over her. She's saying yes to everything without having any boundaries. Like, it's duality. Empathy and strength can exist side by side. And so right. And I think that's the important piece to always remember.
Yeah. And I wonder if maybe you could tell us a story of a time that you used so that we can see how, because this is exactly it, right? You describe early on in your career, maybe leaning into people pleasing too much. And I think people confuse and conflate niceness with people pleasing. So our listeners can understand, what does this actually look like?
Yeah. Well, so Jane is one of the first stories in the book. It's really kind of a cautionary tale, I think, that story, because what happened was I was working on a project and I needed information from Jane to get this project done successfully. And I wasn't getting the information that I needed from her. So she was just like really delayed, and I kept checking in with her and I wasn't getting it. And so I went to my boss, and because I was very early in my career, and I said, I don't know what to do. And my boss said, you need to go over her head. You need to go to her manager and let them know, that this is happening. This is a problem. You need this information. And I went over her head. It didn't feel right to me at all to go over her head and to go to her manager, but I did. And then I ended up getting the information. I got the project done, ended up being fine. But guess what? I ended up hurting my relationship with Jane because I went over her head. And I actually did something that it wasn't me. Like the going over her head, like literally I remember my boss saying, you're being too nice. You need to go, right? So I ended up inviting Jane out to lunch and apologizing and just really letting her know like why I did what I did, and that I was still learning. I was like really early on in my career. And I also really wanted to get to know her on a personal level. I wanted to create more of a personal relationship with her. And the lunch ended up going beautifully. And I think it was a really great example of own your mistakes, right? Like when you do something you probably wish you hadn't done, and own your mistakes. And I think also the moral of the story is I wish that I had developed a personal relationship with her prior, because I think that's what it's relationships, right? I think that was the big learning for me too, is that I had no relationship with Jane. And I was just this like annoying in her email, like, I need this from you to finish this project. So I think the relationship part is really important. I think owning up to your mistakes is really important. And, I also think going back to like the empathy and strength, I think setting boundaries is really important. Setting boundaries I think, allows you to show up in a strong way, because it's like, oh, she knows exactly where she wants to spend her time and where she's not going to spend her time. She's not just saying yes to everything, because that is a people pleasing tendency, right? Like you just want to say yes to everything. And I think that's a big thing to keep in mind, because people pleasing, I've always been a people pleaser and I've had to rein it in. And like one of the ways that I do that is when I get a request in my email asking me to do something, my initial go-to is yes, of course, right? And then so I have to reread the email and I have to really consider, is this aligned with my priorities? Does this strategically make sense for me to get involved with this? Is this where I want to spend my time? Or am I just saying yes because I feel bad saying no? And if it's the latter, it's a no. And it's a kind no. It's just a short couple of sentences, right?
A kind no.
Kind
And,
no.
and so along these lines, like with Jane, and you say you're early on in your career, but just to give an example of how you might, like, let's say you build this relationship with Jane, you've owned your mistakes. Maybe the problem resolves itself because now you know her a little better. But let's just say Jane in the future continues to not give, hypothetically, the
Yeah,
information. Then it's that way of being able to, like, we're not saying that kindness doesn't mean you don't confront Jane. Maybe you've gotten clear on your values and you realize, okay, I am not going to go over Jane's head again. I'm going to
exactly.
go to Jane. But I may have to go to Jane and actually say, hey, Jane, I really need this information. I've requested it several times and I still haven't gotten it. You know, what do I need to do to get this done? Or I don't know.
Yeah.
How did you navigate those kind of challenges going forward as you resolved the people pleasing, but
Yeah.
continued to be nice?
Well, and I think that's right. Like with Jane, that's exactly what ended up happening because once I had a relationship with her, I felt more comfortable having a more direct conversation
Yeah.
with her, you
Yeah.
know? And that did, there were times where I had to go to her and be like, Jane, what's going on? And I could say that because now we have a relationship.
Yeah.
I don't have to sugarcoat, you know?
Right.
Does that make sense? So
It
it's like,
does.
that's why relationship building is so important because relationship is based on trust, right? So a good healthy relationships are based on like this is your world, right? This is what you guys do all day long. But I've always found that if I can build trust with someone, then from there I can build a really healthy relationship with them where if I do need to confront them about something, I feel more comfortable confronting. It's harder to confront someone when you don't have a relationship with
For
them.
sure.
Yeah.
But as you know, I'm thinking women have such a heavy burden to be like even better in the workplace. Not only are they, I mean, these are hard skills. Like, even as somebody who's in this all the time and teaching this and practicing it in my own life, these are not things that are super easy to master. And at the same time, what you're saying is you have to be super boundaried. You have to be probably like a little bit more competent than the average person just to like garner their respect. I mean, this is a high bar for women to kind of master because you can so easily slide into being a bitch. You can so easily slide into being a pushover, like that's straddling this like center of competence and
Yeah.
warmth. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
tough.
It's hard. It is. It's really, really hard. And I do think for me, it's interesting because we're talking about all of these soft skills, but I also, because I've worked in business, for so long, the one thing that I've always found to be super helpful when you're working in corporate is if you're really clear on what success looks like for you and your team, like what is the larger organization
Mm.
looking for? Is it a certain revenue number that you're hitting? Is it certain efficiencies? Is it customer service? Is it, but very clear about what success looks like. That's sort of like your North Star, and everything else just kind of like ladders up into that. Everything else is the how are we going to get there? Like, this is what success looks like. And then how are we going to operate as a team? What are our values? And I've always said that it is really important to be super clear with your team on values and how we work together and how we're respectful of each other. We create space for people to make mistakes and to take risks, and we listen, even if we don't agree, we listen to other people. We really try to get to a shared understanding and modeling that as a leader, So I think this idea of like just really being super, super clear on what success looks like makes everything else, to be honest, like much easier. If you don't know what success looks like, it's really hard. It makes it, does that make sense? Like, it
Yeah.
makes
It
it even
does.
harder.
It does. And also, I just want to say that there's a natural consequence learning that happens with these things, that when you are clear and direct and also kind, and you are effective, that feels good and it produces results. And then that muscle is encouraged to keep going and to keep leading. So the more you do this, just like in any relationship, and the more it lands, you get to success and you have better relationships with people. And then those better relationships foster more success. The more you learn how to find this right balance. Because what I see in the non-work context so often is that when people are first learning to do this, they so often flip from too passive or passive aggressive straight to aggressive. And so many of us skip over assertive. Some people are really good at being assertive at work, but they really struggle to be assertive in their personal relationships. I'm really good at being assertive in my personal relationships, and I'm still learning in the business context. Certainly being a business owner and a therapist has helped. So I also think I want to ask you about two things. One is, I've heard this before, but you mentioned it at the beginning of your book. The study, I think you were listening to Hillary Clinton speak years ago, and maybe she mentioned that study. I had heard it maybe in grad school even, I can't remember, but where they took an avatar of an entrepreneur and they gave him a masculine name and then a feminine name. Can you tell us a little bit about how the audience reacted? Because I think that segues into the second thing, like this double bind. And what are the behaviors that are holding women back at work?
Well, yeah. So that study had to do with ambition. What Hillary was saying was that women that are ambitious are less likable. That's basically what that study found. I know, which is like really hard. When I think about my own career and the way that I've handled ambition, I've always been ambitious. I don't think that it made me less likable though, because I always tried to bring everybody up like alongside me. I think when you're ambitious and you're stepping on a lot of other people's toes as you're climbing, that's a problem. And I could see why that would make you less likable. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
and look, and I know based on that study, based on other studies, there is definitely this bias for sure against women. I get that. But I'm just saying, I think one of the ways that and I don't think I was trying to solve for it. I think it's just who I am. But you know, it's just how is that ambition going to demonstrate itself, in relation to everybody around you?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be ruthless. Ambitious doesn't have
Right.
to be ruthless.
That's right.
And even though there's the bias, you can still be ambitious and have these soft skills, bring people up alongside you, care about people, lead in a healthy way, model good behaviors.
Do you think it's getting easier for women to be ambitious? Because I feel like it's the time of the woman right now. I feel like I see a lot of ambitious women.
I do think I think it's getting a lot easier. I mean, think about it. I wrote that book, The Myth of the Nice Girl. I was working on it in 2016. It came out in 2018. It's been almost 10 years. I do think that it's getting better for sure. Like there's still a long way to go, but I do feel like there's been some progress.
Yeah. I mean, at least maybe women are just not caring as much how they're being perceived too, because there are still, there is still going to be that old patriarchy that may have their ideas, but women saying, fuck it, I don't care.
Yeah.
So, but what are some of the things that still hold women back at work that hold up to the modern light?
Yeah. One of them is this kind of like I can't believe I'm still saying this, but it still holds up. It's actually like not speaking up. And Colette, I'm thinking about your book, The Cost of Quiet, which I'm so excited about. But this is different, I think, from the way that you're kind of the lens that you're using for the book. What I'm talking about is still like having your voice be heard, especially in meetings. And when you're in like with a large group of people, like I am still seeing that women don't speak up as much as men. I do like a lot of these talks around the country where there are both women and men. Like at the end, it's time for Q&A. And it's like always the men that are raising their hands first, and So I am still seeing that. I think it's getting better, but I do feel like it's maybe driven by over analyzing, like, what am I going to say? I want it to like sound perfect. I don't want to embarrass myself, and we overthink and it's like we want to craft the perfect sentence, before we speak. And so that is something that I am still seeing. And I really believe that's like rooted in perfectionism. I also think that women don't prioritize networking as much as men do still. And maybe it's because we have so much to juggle. Like we have so much to juggle in our lives that it's hard to prioritize it. But when I think about all of the career pivots that I've made, like I couldn't have made those pivots without the relationships, without these people supporting me as I move from media to startup investing, as I, move to become an author. And what I'm seeing is like a lot of women waiting to do networking until like they have to find a job. Then all of a sudden they start reaching out to people and it's too late. Like if you don't already have the relationships, it's too late, right? You can't wait until you have to find a job. So those are two that there's more, but I feel like those are two that I still see, the not speaking up and the not prioritizing networking.
I feel like I'm definitely in that not prioritizing networking camp. Like I just feel like when I'm at work and I'm doing work. And then when I come home, like I don't want to even think about work. I really just want to be in my house doing like my domestic responsibilities, and my worlds are very separate. Whereas I think some people just see like their career as this thing they're always working on and they're always networking. I know you're really good at this, Colette. But I have to like think mindfully about shifting into like, oh, I should go and do this thing, or I should go ask this person for coffee, or I should text back, like those kinds of things I have to do very effortfully. And my instinct is still to keep my worlds like very separate.
Separate. Yeah. Yeah. And I think like it doesn't have to be like, know what feels good for you. Like, for example, like if you don't love going to like big networking events, you don't have to go. Or maybe you just pop in and say hello to the host, give a hug, stay for like 15 minutes, but I do think even just like making an effort to like hop on a call every once in a while, like to check in with someone or like go for a walk or like grab a coffee, or I just think so many wonderful opportunities get unlocked. Like the most like serendipitous things like might happen, just by you checking in with someone. Like you might tell them something that you're working on or something you're struggling with, and then they'll say, "Oh, wait, I have the perfect person for you. Let me connect you with them." So I do think having the right people in your corner is really important. Like you don't even need to think about it as a networking per se. It's just making more of an effort to check in with people and to reach out.
Yeah, I like what you're saying about network in the style that's right for you, but network. I mean, what networking would look like for Laura as more of an introvert isn't going to be what it looks like for me as more of an extrovert. But I will say, one, in fairness, I think my personality naturally lends itself toward networking. I enjoy it, but there is an element of it that I do not because I enjoy, but because it has delivered results. Every job I've gotten, even my career, came from somebody suggesting to me that I should go to the school I went to for graduate school. My book contract, all of these things came out of networking, pretty much every opportunity. So I'm a big believer in it because it's produced results. And I think you also highlighted an essential element of the dilemma for women is that many of us with the mental load already have so much on our plates that the thought of networking on top of already managing families and homes and it just feels like so much.
Yeah, it's a lot. And sometimes it could even just be like, I'll be folding laundry and that's like the best time for me. It's like probably the only time that I can multitask because it's so mindless that I'm like, let me like pick up the phone and call someone,
That's so funny. I listen to a podcast.
Listen to a podcast like chat. But yeah, do it in a way that works for you. I am naturally more introverted too. So like, I know I have to really protect my energy because it gets depleted when I'm, when I'm with a lot of people that I don't know. That is like really, really depleting. It's like really hard for me. I don't like small talk. It's just, I love one-on-one. I love being with like a few people who I know really well. I will go to the bigger events, but I usually don't stay that long. I do it in a way that kind of, or like I think about, there are a couple of people that I really want to make sure I see like at the event. I'll make sure like I say hi to them. So absolutely, Colette, like doing it in a way that works for you.
Yeah. Yeah. Because even for me, I used to love all of that. And I think being a therapist, I don't, even though I'm extroverted and I will do small talk, I don't enjoy it because my world is filled with most of my closest friends are therapists. All we talk about is the deep end of the ocean. I don't want to talk about like the weather or like, like what
Yes.
grade your kids are in. I mean, I really don't. I want to
Yeah.
talk about like
Yeah.
life and you and how you feel and like
Yeah.
what you want and all
Yes.
that good stuff. And
Yes.
I think my energy is on all day, every day. So I don't want to go to a big event really and talk to a bunch of people I don't know anymore either. But I do still think to your point, you go, maybe you don't stay as long. I've made those
Yeah.
adjustments too,
Yeah.
because you meet one person that
Yes.
you connect with who becomes a friend, or one person who's like,
One
oh my God,
person. I know.
yeah.
I know. I was working on opening the bookstore because it opened December 12th last year. So I think it was like November, end of November, early December. There was a holiday party and I was so tired. Like I was working all day at the store, getting it ready. And I really didn't want to go to this party. So I was like, but you know what? I'm just going to go. I'm just going to stop in for a little bit. And I ended up meeting Courtney Davis Walker, who now works with me at the bookstore. She works with me on all the events. We do so many events. And she's my events and my marketing person. She almost didn't go either that night. It was really cold. Like she's like, I really don't want to go to this thing. I really didn't want to go either. And we both went, and like she's changed my life in terms. I'm like, she's such an important part of the bookstore. So like that's the thing. Like there's so many moments, and I have like 100 stories like that. Like my move from media to startup investing. It all started over a coffee date where, a founder said to me, "I have so many female friends in New York City who want to start businesses, but when they look up, they don't see any female investors or mentors." And she said to me, "Fran, I think you would be amazing at that." Like because I was running digital for Time Inc., I was meeting with founders all the time and I was meeting with investors all the time. I was very involved in the startup world. And it was because of that conversation. And at the same time, I was thinking, how do I create a more flexible professional life for myself? My kids were really little. And she planted that seed for me. And a year later, so it's like making time.
You're making it sound really good.
Yeah, I
I'm
think
gonna
it's
do
worth
that.
doing. It's worth
Yeah.
doing because I will sometimes push myself to go to something, and some things are going to be a dud. Some things don't yield at anything. But if this is your approach, push yourself to go, force yourself to talk to a person or two. Overall, it's going to yield way more opportunities. I've met some of the closest and best people in my life this way, and it's also led to so many career opportunities. So I definitely want to ask you too, along those lines, about your approach to your career, your portfolio approach, your career pivots, and opening your bookstore, because you have had so many different lives. And I think so many of our listeners and Laura and I want this too, right? We don't want to just be one thing, and we want to be able to shift as we move into new seasons of life.
Yeah. And, I think that being in corporate for as long as I was, for 20 years, was so wonderful because I learned so much. I acquired so many skills, technical skills and soft skills, and I built this incredible network. And so it was wonderful. And then I was kind of ready to like, okay, maybe I do want like a little bit more of a portfolio approach. I went from like, when you're in corporate, you are heads down. Because when you're in a big job, like that's it. That's you. There's no room really for anything else. But having had now this portfolio career for, gosh, it's been, I guess, 12 years. It's really been so wonderful because I get to choose the projects that I work on and the people that I work with. And that is, I mean, such a blessing, right? Like to be able to say, like, I want to invest in this company. It's really cool. It's going to make a huge impact on the world. I'm going to do that, or I really want to write this book. I'm going to create, I wanted to write this book when I was in corporate. It never happened, but I was able to carve out time to write my first book and then my second book. And, I'm working on a third book right now. So the idea of like really being able to choose and the bookstore has been a dream of mine for forever. And
So
it's a
cool.
passion project and it's something that's really wonderful for the community. But it is also really interesting that everything that I'm working on right now, there is synergy. There's like I'm an author. I do the Bookbound podcast where we interview nonfiction authors about their publishing paths to really help writers who are thinking about publishing a book. Like, how do I find an agent? And how does this work? And as part of the podcast or attached to the podcast, we also, Bethany Saltman, who co-hosts it with me, we do workshops. We have a Read Like a Writer book club that we do. Like, so those are like paid products that we've attached to the podcast. And then I've got the bookstore. I mean, everything that I'm doing right now is very books related, right?
Love it.
It's either like I'm writing books, I'm reading books, I'm selling books at the bookstore, I'm helping authors get their books out into the world. And it is cool even to see like how the bookstore has become this like third space, where in the community where I can really support other authors and I can bring them together with readers. And so it's cool that like all of these things, they are different, but they do all fit together and kind of support each other and help each other from a business perspective.
I'm so jealous that you have that bookstore. I mean, we were in Nantucket and Colette and I were like, oh my God, we need a bookstore with like a coffee shop attached. But I mean, can you just for our listeners, like define this whole idea of a portfolio approach to career?
Yeah. So a portfolio approach is, I've also heard it be described as you're a multi-hyphenate, right?
Yep.
Because it's like or a slashy because you're this, this, and this. So it's really it's where you don't go all in on one thing, but you have these multiple, different kind of parts of your career. And I think more and more people are approaching this type of career because it's very rewarding. It's very fulfilling. Now, look, I don't think I could have done this if I hadn't done 20 years of corporate first,
That's what I was
right?
thinking too.
Because that gave me the financial security right? That gave me the network, that gave me the skills, that was sort of the foundation,
Foundation. Yeah.
right? To be able to do this. Like could I have done this right out of college? I mean, wow, that would have been really risky and hard, I think, right? So what I'm seeing, especially a lot of women are like, they're doing these careers, whether it's in corporate or government or academics or, wherever, the medical field, they have this like incredible career. And then they decide, you know what, I kind of want to mix it up a little bit, and
Yeah.
and then they transition into this portfolio career. I love it. It keeps me energized. I have so much flexibility. My boys are in 8th and 10th grade, and it's really important for me that I'm there for them. That when whether it's like driving them around or it's just it fits with my life. Like this portfolio approach, I think just really fits with the priorities in my life right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for some people, maybe it's, a side hustle or starting a project and you never know where it's going to go. But I do love that we're embracing more and more of if something lights you up, try it because you said it, right? The work you're doing right now energizes you. And who knows if you pivot again in the future. I think our work we spend so much time doing work and whatever work you choose, even if it is to be at home and that is your job, it should be something that is fulfilling and purposeful. And if it's not, let's get curious about what needs to be added or subtracted or what thing you loved a million years ago that you haven't touched
Yes.
might light you up now. Because I really do think that when we talk about what you describe of being kind and also strong, a lot of this comes down to confidence. And the more you're doing what you love, the more you build relationships, like you said, the more confident, the more you're your best self. They all go together.
They really do. And I love that you brought up the side hustle. I'm a big fan of the side hustle.
Me
Like
too.
everything, right? It's like when I was in corporate and I started thinking about, okay, do I want to move into startup investing? I spent my last year in corporate investing on the side because I wanted to make sure that it was something I really enjoyed. I'm like, if I'm going to leave this big job and, you know, this incredible company, let me test the waters first, you know? And so I'm a big fan, no matter where you are right now, you know, in your life. Like if there's something that lights you up, if there's something that you're curious about, start it. Just start, see where it goes.
And see.
You might love it and you might want to go deeper in, or you might say, you know what, this isn't what I thought. But it's just such a low risk way of figuring it out.
Yeah, we talk about it all the time.
Yeah, the active dabble. Try something because there is no way to know until you do. And, you know, as we wrap up here, Fran, I should also say, I just thought of back to the networking for a second, that you and I met because we attended a networking event, right?
Yes, we are both Penguin Random House authors. And it was they did a virtual event to bring us together.
They had an author happy hour, right?
Author happy hour. And then you and I just started messaging. And so that's how you and I met.
Yeah. And it just goes to the point. I remember that day I had so many sessions and I thought, for me, Zoom is so draining. You know, I get energized by the energy of a human being in the room, but I don't get energized in the same way by human beings on screen. And so after a long day of therapy, I thought this is just going to be like an energy drain. And then I met you. So and you're so lovely and so talented, and I'm enjoying your work so much. And Laura and I are definitely going to have you back on when your next book comes out, which will be in October of 2026. Tell us, before we wrap up, tell us a little bit about your upcoming book, and then also tell our listeners where they can find you, work with you, get your books, all that good stuff.
Yeah, no, thank you. So my next book is 20 Minutes is the New Hour. I'm so excited for this book. I mean, basically all of the speaking that I've been doing around the country, the number one thing that I hear from women is just how hard it is to find time, you know, to do the networking, to do like the personal branding, to do all of the things that like I and other career experts, you know, talk about. It's like, how do you find the time? So that's what this book is about. It's really about how do we stop overdoing? How do we move past perfectionism and people pleasing and other behaviors that are really harmful to our relationship with time? And so I'm really excited about it. It comes out actually September 22nd. And in terms of connecting with me on social, I'm on Instagram, Fran_Houser. And I'm also very active on LinkedIn. And I have a Substack as well, From the Desk of Fran Houser.
Yes, cool. I love your Substack too, and seeing what's going on with you. Well, thank you so much for being here, Fran. It was such a pleasure, and I think there's so much our listeners are going to get out of this that they can apply to their careers and life.
Thank you both so much. I really loved our conversation.
Us too. And thank you to all of you guys who listened today. We hope you got some insights from our couch, and we will see you next week.
Bye, guys.